Hey everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of Songs That Made the Movie on the Scratch a Track podcast, presented by the Dude and Grim Show. I am the Dude.
And I am Grim. And today we are talking about Good Morning Vietnam, which
Hey, this is rock and roll.
was one of those movies I grew up with. And the music always stuck out to me. Now, it's interesting because we've done a couple of these, and in some of them, the music was so much more constant throughout the film. And in this film, I felt like there was a lot of space for just the movie, just the dialogue to breathe. But when the music hit, it really came in.
Yeah,
Right?
a lot of the music and a lot of the scenes are, or a lot of the music is played when he's kind of
on the radio,
in character on the radio, and they do some really cool things where they'll start playing a song and then it shows them kind of having fun in the studio, but then it also cut to sort of the troops out in the field and doing R&R, but also having guns and walking around and everything. So it's pretty cool. I liked how they did that, but you're totally right. Kind of when they're out of the studio, the music is not as prevalent and they really focus more on the story and progressing that.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing that caught me is, there was so much of this because this was one of those movies I guess I would just say I grew up with. Robin Williams was like really, at his like height kind of at that time. And this was a perfect role for him. And that's what stuck out to me as a kid. I guess I didn't really understand some of the historical significance, especially that it was set in 1965, so way early on in Vietnam, as we would think of it.
Yeah, well, speaking of Robin Williams and him, this is a really kind of big role for him. It's sort of, when you look at him and some of the things he's done, a very different role. If you're like, oh, this is a Robin Williams was in a Vietnam movie. But when you put it in the context of him being a radio DJ, wow, just did a phenomenal job. He was nominated for Best Actor.
I could see that.
For an Oscar. He lost to Michael Douglas in Wall Street, who also that was a really good role for Michael Douglas. But I would be interested to know a little more about the writing of this, and then Robin Williams acting, and how that process went. Because if you've ever seen an interview with Robin Williams, like if you see his Inside the Actor's Studio, if you can, I don't know if you can get that on YouTube, but it is phenomenal. But he's not an easy person to kind of wrangle in. He just
really?
goes. He just goes, and
so he's kind of like tangents. The genie in Aladdin all the time.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing that I'm wondering is I wonder if during kind of the filming of this, because there's just some great scenes where he's just like just going off, right? So I'm really curious if they just kind of set the camera up and just let him go.
Yeah.
But because he's also a stand-up comic, so very easy for him to,
and you can see that in the way
that material
he does, in the way he does his just radio broadcasts. I mean, it's amazing because he just has all these different characters and all these different voices. But I found there was a lot of interest. There was a couple things. So before we get into like what was your favorite scene, you had mentioned about how they show them in the studio, and especially in the beginning, it's so positive and everyone's just blown away with how good he is, and there's actually somebody funny there. And he's doing a great job. And at that point, when they show the soldiers in the field, you don't really see like what I would call a lot of violence or a lot of distressing things. It's almost like they're just kind of going through the motions of what they have to do as they're in Vietnam. But as the movie progresses, it gets darker. And I think in his final radio broadcast, when he plays What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong, and it's like they're blowing up a fucking village and they're executing the confidants of his friend that turns out to be one of what they would call the Vietnamese terrorists. It's interesting how it gets like so much darker kind of as it goes on, and the reality of what's going on in Vietnam really starts to sink in, because it's like when they go through, there's X amount of troops, and then you always see the newsreels, and it's like they're upping it from 125,000 to 250,000 to 350,000. It's interesting, and that's the stuff that you wouldn't have picked up. I did not pick that up as a kid.
Yeah, as a kid, I didn't either. I was more focused on Robin Williams and him just saying funny stuff and kind of loosely following the story.
Yes.
It'd probably been a few years since I'd seen it. And even a few years ago, I don't know if I fully grasped everything. But this time I felt like I was focusing on it a little more. And just referencing, we'll talk a little more about the scenes. But at the end with It's a Wonderful World, kind of one of the last, I think, montages that they really do. It's such an amazing contrast, like that song versus what you're seeing.
Yeah.
And one thing that was crazy, man, is this soundtrack went platinum. And What a Wonderful World was actually released as a single and charted again, reaching up to number 32,
No
20 years after it was released.
Wow.
Which is
that's the power of
cool.
a good scene right there.
It is, yeah. Well, you and I were also, obviously the Vietnam War or conflict, or however it's characterized. I don't know how they fully.
I think at this point it was still considered a conflict.
Okay. We've loved Vietnam movies throughout the years. From Apocalypse Now, Platoon, Full Metal Jacket, Deer Hunter. And with a lot of these movies, especially Apocalypse Now and Full Metal Jacket and Platoon, those three heavily, music is such a big part of those movies. And the music that the troops are listening to, and they do play it within scenes. It's what they are listening to, but then also sometimes it's above the action.
I know, and it's funny as we started doing this. That's one thing that I think, I guess, me as not being someone who's been a film guru my whole in my life. That's something that I kind of just recently really started to pay attention to more, and I find it very interesting. And then you brought up how some of these really good directors will take a song from within a scene and then it's like over the scene as well, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and some directors who use it, and they do use it really well. But I've always noticed that when you look at like Apocalypse Now, you have the song "The End," "No Satisfaction" by the Stones. Platoon has "White Rabbit." Full Metal Jacket has "Paint It Black" at the end credit sequence. There's just a lot of music.
Which one is Platoon Samuel Barber Adagio for strings as well? Is that in Platoon?
Yes. Yeah, it is. That's
well
a really
chosen.
Good,
yeah,
definitely. Oliver Stone nailed that one for sure. But so maybe we can go through some of the scenes and sequences a little bit. But I think before we even get going, obviously we want people to go ahead, subscribe, and comment below.
Subscribe, and comment below.
Yeah, please.
We can go ahead and mark that. Mark it as zero. Because we were way late on that, but I'm sure you guys have already done it, so it doesn't even really matter at this point.
Well, one thing I did want to touch on before we start going through the scenes that I found interesting, and I think this is probably unique to this movie, maybe in any movie that we're going to talk about, but certainly in terms of things that we already have. And there are a lot of songs that are either referenced, spoken about, lines are recited, or actors kind of sing them lightly, or they sing them, but the song is not played. And
that is interesting.
I took note of them because it really, the first one is he talks about Freddie and the Dreamers, but he doesn't play the record. And then when he takes over the English class, he does the thing, my boyfriend's back and you're going to be in trouble. Hey now, my boyfriend's back.
My boyfriend's back.
But they never play the song. The love interest, that it doesn't come to fruition, but his love interest sings Puff the Magic Dragon. They do Under the Boardwalk, Shout, You Just Keep Me Hanging On. They talk about Petula Clark's Downtown, and Get a Job is one of them. But those were just some of them that I noted, and I just found it interesting that they made references to so many good songs but didn't play them.
It's really funny you say that, and I appreciate it, because when I was watching the credit sequence, I noticed that they gave credit to, I think, a lot of those songs.
Oh, they do. And if you look at the Good Morning Vietnam soundtrack on IMDb, they're also listed on there. Okay. But again, they don't. Even
though they weren't played, they still give them credit.
Yeah,
that's interesting. I wonder if they had to pay. I mean, I imagine they had to pay license and royalties and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but there were other ones that were on the list, the IMDb list, that for the life of me, I didn't pick up that they were in there, and maybe it was just a little part of it, or it was off in the background, but I just didn't pick up on them.
There was some when I was looking at the end credits too, and the one you mentioned, You Keep Me Hanging On. I don't know. Does somebody sing that, or
I think it's that one of the actors sings it or makes a reference to it.
Okay, because I was like, man, I don't remember some of these songs.
Yeah,
and maybe it was interesting, but there are some phenomenal songs, and you see really Robin Williams just spinning like a top at his best, doing the DJ, playing the DJ, and then he introduces some of the songs, and a lot of them are those montages too, where it's them in the studio kind of having fun, and then they cut back and forth from that to the troops out in the field. But there's some great ones. I mean, dude, what is it? Nowhere to Run is, I think, the first one that they really play. Yes. I love that song. Yeah, dude. That is just an amazing song.
Because we were talking about a Martha and the Vandellas song in a movie recently. I could.
Well, we did an episode on one Martha and the Vandellas.
I know that, but
Dancing in the Streets.
Yeah, but I feel like you brought up this song specifically. Or maybe it was a different one by them, but
no, this one is in something else, and I can't fully remember. I'm sure I did bring
Predator?
It up. No. Probably, yeah. Also, dude, Beach Boys Get Around. I mean,
I Get Around. Yeah. No, that was a really good one. I really like, dude, The Game of Love too.
Sure.
That
Game of Love. Dude, Sugar and Spice, Liar Liar by the Castaways.
That
dude,
one.
Isn't it good?
And that's just after he gets scolded, right? By Dickerson.
Yeah. Big Dick. Dude, James Brown, I Feel Good. Oh.
Yeah. What were I also, and it's very funny that how after Bruno Kirby takes over and they play like the polka and shit, which is one thing I like is how they have the newsreel go through that more troops are going to go to Vietnam, and then you see that scene where it's the cargo bay door opening on a plane and they play this goofy sounding polka as it just looks like a circus outside of all these soldiers just going every which way and doing everything. I thought that was well placed to use one of those polkas, and I think it looks like it was actually a Lawrence Welk one, which is funny because Lawrence Welk was brought up several times. And dude, that's another thing. Like when I was at my Polish grandparents' house in the UP, like dude, you watched Lawrence Welk, and it was
my grandparents
informative and stimulating.
Well, it's funny because even after the first episode, or not the first episode, the first, I guess, performance or DJ his day on the job. Yeah. He gets done, and Bruno Kirby comes in, who people who haven't seen it, and is he a sergeant? I think he's a sergeant.
Yeah, right? He's like one rank above them, and he's pissed off. Yeah.
But he's basically saying, what's this Good Morning Vietnam, and the weather isn't always the same here. Today it's 2 degrees cooler than it was
he's such the day before. Fucking nerd, man.
And he wants him to play like the music that they have like
that their parents would listen to.
Yeah. And so he's like throwing stuff out, and one of them he's like Lawrence Welk, and then Robin Williams is like, would Bob Dylan be out of line?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that is funny.
He's like, yes. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Now, apparently they did a cover by the Grassroots in this, or there's at least credit to it, A Ballad of a Thin Man, which is a Bob Dylan song.
Oh, wow. Really?
I didn't pick that one up.
Don't remember hearing that.
And I mean, I didn't like casually watch this. I watched this movie like focused specifically to pick up on the music in it. So if anyone knows where that is, please comment below after you like and subscribe.
Like, subscribe, and comment below.
Well, I'm not sure. That it kind of covers most of my thoughts about the movie. I think one of the things we've kind of said is that the songs take place for the most part within like the DJ scenes and those montages, and then kind of outside of the studio and outside the booth, you don't get quite as much music in the movie. So for me, I kind of had a hard time linking a specific song or songs, because they'll play songs together within the montages. Yeah, I know. Too. So I had a hard time being like, oh, this one or this one.
But if you had to pick a scene, even if it was a scene with several, like could you definitively say this was my favorite scene, whether it was one song or several?
I think for me, it would be the Nowhere to Run by Martha and the Vandellas, just because that's our intro to him, and you don't get to see him. He says some funny lines in the movie before that, but as soon as that on air gets turned on, it is like a literal switch is flipped inside his head, and you just see him just go off. Yeah. And it's really cool to see that, and then it goes kind of going into the song. So I'd say that's probably where mine would go.
And does that also, if you had a favorite song in the movie, would that also be your favorite song?
I think so. I think it is.
So you're doing. You're doing it too.
I really like. Yeah. I really like cool. I Get Around by the Beach Boys, but yeah.
Yeah, that is a good one. Okay. Dude, my favorite scene, I gotta go with What a Wonderful World, because it's like everything has built up to this point, and it's like heartbreaking to see what's really happening out there. And it's super fucked up to see the rice paddies in the villages, and say what you will about what happened. I mean, innocent blood is probably always going to get shed in something like that, and that was like such a poignant moment, I guess, in the movie, I thought. But that was not my favorite song used in the movie.
Okay, well, do tell.
Dude, Liar Liar by the Castaways. There's something with that sound.
It is.
Yeah, Kevin, it's like a combination of a guitar bend and like something else, but it's just a really interesting sound that they get.
It is, and that scream in the background too. Right?
Yeah, that's always struck me as a really interesting song, and I want to know now. I want to know who produced it.
Who produced it, Grim?
By the Castaways. Yeah, here we go.
What do you got for us?
Well, I have a suspicion.
Literally on the edge of my seat.
I know you are. But what does it say here? Originally recorded by the Castaways. Does it say who produced it?
What the fuck is that shit?
Yeah, dude. I'll actually put that in there. Really? I mean, I'm not going to read the whole... the producer of the track was Timothy D. Kerr. Never even heard of him.
No.
But an excellent job. I love the way I love the way that song sounds. It's so cool.
It's pretty badass.
Yeah.
Well, I think that kind of wraps things up here, Mr. Grimm. It's a phenomenal movie. Highly recommend people, even if you're not necessarily people like war movies or Vietnam films.
It's a much lighter war movie or Vietnam movie specifically than a lot of them.
You'll really appreciate the comedy, and Robin Williams just does a fantastic job. And there's a great supporting cast. I mean, J.T. Walsh, people know as Matthew Andrew Markinson from A Few Good Men. Bruno Kirby's in it. Forrest Whitaker. There's just a bunch of other actors that you've seen in a lot of other movies.
I don't know who plays Jimmy Wah, but he is amazing. It's like the previous generation of Ken Jeong. I mean, he's so goddamn funny. Jimmy Wah, really, he's my favorite character in the whole movie.
There you go. So
he's smiling the whole time, like ear to ear, man.
And his suits are fantastic.
Yeah. Dude, they should. I understand why they bombed his bar because the GIs hang out there. But it's like, how the fuck could you do that to Jimmy?
Jimmy. Sorry, Jimmy. Yeah. Can you hear Jimmy? I can hear Jimmy. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. We're a big fan of movies here and music in movies, so we're starting to do a few more of these. We've done Pulp Fiction and Boogie Nights. If you haven't checked those ones out, give those ones a listen. Lots of good songs in those movies, and they're great movies too. So
yeah,
if you haven't seen them, maybe watch the episode and then watch the movie. Maybe do that. So
yeah.
So until next time, everyone, it's time to go. The Dude and Grim Show.
Scratch a Track is produced by the Dude and Grim. Additional music provided by Moore and the Tims. Copyright 2021. The Dude and Grim Show.